Today I have two bigger projects for you. They are very detailed and interactive, and I start with the skull which I found at a thrift store. It came with a few vertebrates attached. I had to remove those as well as some screws, so I had the right size to fit into this candlestick which I'll show you in a moment. It comes with eyes that light up, which is very cool. It also has a little push button that turns them on just momentarily. There are, of course, batteries here in the back compartment. Now, this candlestick I had for a long time. It's really solid and strong, and it fits near perfectly into his neck here. And it's already pretty solid, but of course, I will stabilize it even more. First, I sanded down some rough edges here, and then I wanted to change that factory seam that just didn't look natural. Then you see me altering this side of his head a bit with my texture paste. And the reason is that initially I was not going to decorate the side, but just use some gold foil. But as you will see as things move along, I changed my mind on that, but I left it in so you can see where I started. Now with all of my projects, I use my E6000 glue, and I work with recycled bits like broken jewelry, kids' toys. I work with game pieces, handyman items, household bits, and many more. Here you can get a first view of how I proceeded. Sorry, not a lot of footage, but you've seen me do this many times. So I used some big jewelry bits right on top of his head and then filled in everything else with smaller items. I used some oxygen hoses, I added some gears, there are some electrodes. Just lots of things that give me that mechanical look and that interact well with each other so I can make them movable or at least interesting. Many of those pieces and some of the other more prominent ones I glued down by drilling a hole into the plastic skull with my wood burner, so I was able to glue them down very securely. Next, I use more texture paste to roughen up some of the very smooth area, especially underneath the skull and his jaw, but also I give a really light coat over all the other elements I added. It just gives a bit extra texture. Just a little reminder here, my Etsy store is alive but not very stocked, because I do a lot of local sales. But if you see any project here in my videos that you might like to buy, let me know so below in the comments and I will list it just for you. So I covered up the eyes and the cord with some kitchen foil. So here's the way it looks after 2 coats. Now I left the eyes unpainted for a while, but I will change my mind on that one too in just a wee bit. So here I work on it with my Prima waxes in copper and in blue, and I think it looks pretty cool. So right about here I changed my mind about the gold foil. I actually tried it out, didn't like it. So I went over it with black gesso and decorated the other side as well. I added more gears, I added more movable parts, even a little door. Here you can see what it looks like now, and I added that little clicker into a red see-through box. I thought it just looked a little better. And yes, the switch still turns on and the eyes glow, and as you can see, I painted them black as well. I will try to show you a really good all-around view of this head, but it's not always so easy to catch all the details. So just in case, I'm also posting extra photos so you won't miss anything. Here in the front you can see that I added a little bit of white to his teeth just to make them stick out a bit more. I also added a few small amber jewels just here and there. So on with the next project, I will show you some of the basic components. This is the stand that you use for stacking cups in the kitchen. Here I have a piece of pipe, a round piece of wood, and a turntable. I glued those together. And then my heat gun broke, and from it I rescued this little propeller, and it near perfectly fits in the back of this metal stand. I also have this brown thing, and I found it at a thrift store. I'm not sure what it was originally meant to be, but it will serve me well in this little contraption. So here is a big jump ahead. I used some lace for texture on the pipe, and otherwise lots and lots of jewelry pieces, especially bracelets, but also toys and charms and handyman bits like wall plugs and screws and nuts and electrodes. These tank-like things from coffee makers. I used straws, I used hair ties, gears, of course, and you name it. Now I have these two pieces that I want to add. This one you already saw. And then I have a top of a very simple little plastic treasure box, and it will go here. And then I made this front piece from the cover of a bath bomb and some bracelets. Now these pieces I don't want to spray paint because they're see-through, and I will alter them later. So here in the back you can see that the propeller turns. I attached movable rudders made from kids' toys. I used some leather strips around those tanks, and I added some charms of a skull on top of it. Now underneath I used a toy pipe as well as a plastic tablecloth clip. Now I left the front here open so you can get a good look into the engine room. I made it all look very functional. There are some hoses, there are some levers, there are some tools, some electronic bits, there are some wires to give the illusion that everything could work together. Next, I added a little bit of texture paste to these three items. I will then cover them in black gesso, and I work on the glass part with my alcohol inks in kind of yellow and brown just to make them look aged. So I spray painted everything, worked on it with my metallic waxes, and glued everything together, and here is the final result. Now this is of course meant to be a steampunk submarine. I guess lately I have been working on a lot of different animals, and I felt like working on something completely different, and I love this mechanical contraption and had a lot of fun putting it together. So here in the front is a dial, then inside the cockpit is a blue shiny stone, and there's a second one in the engine room. And then I added two periscopes, and they're both dental related, and you can most likely recognize them. These things also got some of my alcohol inks to age them up a bit. I also installed a light. This is from a kid's toy. I added a magnet. I added a little spider web on top and a chain so it doesn't get lost. But first, to the inside, there is a movable little bell. There is a gear that turns, and actually there are some figurines in there as well. Now these came from a Christmas village. The one in the tower was a Salvation Army guy with a great captain hat. The one in the front in the driver's seat was just someone sitting on a bench. And the guy in the engine room was actually shoveling snow, but I painted it and now he's shoveling coal, the poor guy. So here you can see how the light is nice and blue and can be positioned in two different ways to light up the engine room. Now I used some hair ties for hoses, and I positioned them in the way that it gives the illusion that the power from the engine goes all the way through the submarine into the front to also power the steering and navigation. So I tried to engineer these things to the best of my capability. I added a lot of movable parts to make it more interesting that can be played with, including this little anchor that also has a magnet and can be attached here on the bottom as well as higher up. Like the last few videos I posted, this is again more of a presentation one, and if you're new to my channel and you wonder about my process and you would like to see more details, you can find lots and lots of process videos right here on my channel. Now, for the ones of you who have been following me for a while, I think you're quite familiar with the way I work, and I hope you enjoyed today's video and my projects. If so, please let me know below in the comments. You know I love to hear from you. I should be back with more projects soon. In the meantime, take care and stay creative.